All right, hey guys, it is I once again, here with a little bit more daylight, and my little wee Chimbleton, who has had a nice long walk and some little chicken snack thing, and so he'll probably be pretty settled. He's content to just lounge in my bosom now. So I'm possessed of another idea today, and I'm using the term possessed in a tongue-in-cheek way because today we're talking about the fabulous life of Jesus Christ. And I have a lot of thoughts around this, but when I say fabulous, I mean in the context of a fable, okay? So, doesn't matter, well, what your beliefs are, to be clear. You don't need to get turned on or get turned off by the J word or the dreaded G word. This is really about his life as a fable, which is something like what's the moral of the story of Jesus Christ's life as we know it, as we've received it, right? So to those who don't know what a fable is, classic example would be the tortoise and the hare, and the takeaway of that being slow and steady wins the race, which kind of always bothered me. Another one which I like better is the story of the scorpion and the frog, and so I'm gonna paraphrase it, but basically there's a scorpion and a frog on a riverbank, and of course frogs can swim, scorpions can't, and the scorpion says, "Hey, let me jump on, if you're going to cross that river, let me jump on your back and I'll take you there. And let me come along for the ride, I mean to say." And the frog says, "Well, if I let you get on my back, you're going to sting me, right? Because you're a scorpion." And the scorpion says, "No, no, no, I'm not going to do that." And sure enough, halfway along, halfway across the river, the scorpion stings a frog, and the frog goes, "Why did you do that? You told me you wouldn't do that." And it said, "Well, of course I did that. I'm a scorpion." Right? And I love that story because it really is a powerful moral there. And it's interesting because if you do kind of buy into Christian ethics on any level, it presents an interesting conundrum, which is like, what does it mean to not judge people? You know, is not judging people supposed to be meaning that you ignore them even if they're an existential threat? Surely not, right? I think it's more of a case of not judging people in that sort of transcendental sense of attributing who or what they are to some kind of moral failing, okay? So that's an interesting distinction to make, but that's an example of what a fable is. And so if we look at Jesus Christ's life, what is what's the moral of that story? Like, because again, we're not taking it literally here, or we don't need to take it literally of saying, oh, he was the Son of God and, something, something, he died for your sins. Like, all of that stuff is a meta narrative, right? It's kind of metaphysical, and even some of the gospels are really even vague about that. It's only the Gospel of John where it starts getting really hard into the idea that he was like the Son of God, and also he died for our sins, and all of, like, that's the only one that really goes ham on that cosmological narrative. All the rest of them are pretty vague about it, but it's still a powerful story. And I think here's what I think the moral of the story is. I think the moral of the story is it's impossible to be honest unless you're willing to die. And this might sound kind of like exaggerated. It's like a little bit of hyperbole, I guess. But I think that's kind of, I think the story goes to that extreme to show that it's really not. Because, you know, we all flirt with dishonesty in our life, right? And one of the reasons that I don't edit these videos very much, like I edit them at absolute bare minimal amount, is number one, because I find it jarring when I watch other YouTube videos and there's these like constant cuts and you can't unsee them once you see them, right? Like I'm sure some of you know what I'm talking about. Others, you might not know what I'm talking about, but then you'll go and watch some other YouTube video, especially like vlogs and stuff like that, where someone's having what appears to be like a stream of consciousness conversation with the audience. But then there's all these little cuts, like they've cut the little pauses out. And I think I understand why people would do that. And like, of course it's commendable to, like on a just a sheer kind of diligence to trying to deliver a better product to people. Like on that level, I understand that of like, don't waste people's time or whatever. But it's also like masking the imperfection of their delivery, right? It's like making them seem like they're more concise than they really are. And it's throwing the tempo off as well. Like I'm a musician and I'll be talking more about that another time, but this happens in music as well, where nowadays when you record everything into a computer, it's all locked to a grid. And so there's this like very strict tempo, which you're strongly encouraged to adhere to, let's say. It's very difficult to have music that feels like it has a free time to it, like rubato or whatever. I don't want to get too much into the technical specifics, but the point is like, it ends up coming across as robotic, and it's also not an honest expression of how good of a musical performance you did, because you digitally manipulate everything to like fit into the paradigm, right? So again, like this is kind of a form of dishonesty from one perspective. And of course, you know, I also don't edit it because I'm lazy and I don't want to be perfectionistic. Like I don't want to just not do something because I think I'm going to have to spend 8 hours editing it, right? That's what I think is amazing that these people do, is like, it takes a long time to do that. But then the question is, well, where do you draw the line? Like, we're all somewhat dishonest. From that perspective, right? From that example I've just given you, you can see like everybody's doing it a little bit, right? Especially in the social media age. But we would all like to think that we could be honest if we really needed to, right? And so this is where this, I think, beautifully relates to my previous video, in which I talked about the idea of what it takes to win something, and the idea that you should be able to win something if you really wanted to or needed to. Telling the truth is similar. We all like to think that we tell it how it is when we need to, right? And we see that there's something admirable about that in disagreeable people. You know, by like disagreeable, I guess I mean sort of curmudgeonly, or people who are not confrontationally averse. If you, if you screw them over, if you fuck them over, they'll call you out on it. If you, step in front of them in line, they'll say, "Hey, buddy, you pushed in," right? And they won't stand for it. And we kind of like that. Now, of course, we don't like it if they're being a dick for no reason, right? If they're insulting people or using the truth as a weapon in some kind of way, then we say, well, that's not the right kind of honesty. And I think that's true, right? I think that's where you sort of like being too literal or childish about the idea that you shouldn't lie will ultimately you come undone with that. But you can see in the case of Jesus' life, this is an example of a guy who was not going to lie, no matter what. And we all know what happened, right? He literally got nailed to a cross. And it seems that really did happen. And so, like, what do we make of that? You know, the fact that this guy would not lie could only have been, it only works if either he thought he was not going to die really, as in the resurrection, or if he thought that telling the truth was so important that the fact that it was going to cost him his life was a fair trade, right? And almost none of us are in that position. You know, even people who proclaim to be faithful Christians, Muslims, Hindus, whatever, probably don't want to die. Even though they think death is not it, like not the end. You know, there's, for good reason, as life forms, as organisms, none of us are lining up to die, right? So the question becomes, well, what would it take? Like, for you to die voluntarily? Most people don't have a good answer to that, including me, right? You know, Napoleon once said that one of his greatest insights is that men are happy to die for ribbons, which was his way of saying, like, it was sort of painfully easy to get soldiers to sacrifice their own lives. And it's funny, like, he said that like in this kind of matter-of-fact way, but that doesn't ring true in modernity to me, or at least it's only a special kind of human being who is like that. And so I think that's the moral. I think that even if you don't kind of buy into his perception of the world, you can see that Jesus was a guy, from the way that the stories tell it, who really believed that the kingdom of heaven was coming, and that anyone who wasn't in line with what God wanted a citizen of heaven to be was going to get annihilated. So when he talks about hell, it's like, it's normally, he uses imagery of a furnace. It's not, I think that kind of like torture and pitchforks and stuff. I'm using so many terrible buzzwords, YouTube's. All my other videos get 2 views. This is only gonna get 1 or 0. You're gonna use that word torture again, why not? You know, in hell and all of those ideas, even though Jesus talks about hell more than almost anyone else in the Bible, like, I think he really just he phrases it in such a way, it's really just annihilation. And so I think he really thought that he was saving people from annihilation, and that he already had saved himself from annihilation. So if we wind that back to like just a day-to-day level, you can see as a modern human, we don't have that kind of grandiose reference point anymore. And so when someone says something and we want to like call them out on it, it seems like we're making this little minute decision, but the fear response in a lot of us, especially people who consider themselves to have social anxiety, or again, like people-pleasy type of people, there's a fear response that's so powerful that it actually prevents us from even escalating something to a low-level confrontation. And I submit to you that that is because of a fear of exile, which is, by extension, a fear of death. And so you really need to have, like, honesty. A prerequisite of radical honesty is a radical cosmology. You actually have to think that telling the truth or not telling the truth is of critical importance. Otherwise, you're just going to let it slide. Okay, we're at 15 minutes. I'm going to call it there because while I don't want to edit down my videos to a bunch of jarring cuts of me going, yeah, really cool, yeah. I don't want to drag them on for eternity either. And this is not a dressing gown lecture because my dressing gown is behind me, so I can say, "Get behind me, Satan," because it's right here. And I say that because my dressing gown is an interesting thing. I don't know if you guys have dressing gowns, but I think pajamas are the same. If you put them on, it's kind of a way of writing your day off. It's like you're comfortable, but there's a weight to that comfort. And that sort of precludes you doing anything of significance, which is relieving, but also dangerous in the long term. Okay, I will leave it there. Love you and leave you and all that. Let me know what you think about this. And I'm looking forward to talking more about all of the topics I talked about today, because I think there's a lot to unpack with all of it. All right, lots of love. Stay safe, or don't if it's really fucking important. All right, good on you. See you later.